Let's roll.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for Austin Inno's State of Innovation today, centered around fostering cultures of innovation. It's been a while since we've seen each other, so I'm excited to be here and glad to have so many people here with us. My name is Brent Wiestrom, and I'm the senior editor at Austin Inno, which is a sister site to the Austin Business Journal. Austin Inno is part of a growing network of sites. We're currently in more than 40 markets, which have recently launched, and we have more coming soon. We're committed to covering and connecting local technology startups, growth, and innovation. So thank you for following Inno. And if you're interested in founders, startups, and funding news in other cities, you can find those on our site, Austin Inno. Make sure you're getting The Beat, which is our local daily newsletter. It's the best way to stay plugged into everything that's impacting the local innovation economy. In it, you'll get the local tech and startup news you need, analysis you won't find anywhere else, and information on upcoming events, cool job openings, and much more. And we try to keep it fun and conversational. So before we get started, I wanted to thank our partners for powering the Austin Inno platform and helping us bring you everything you need to know about local innovation. Our presenting event sponsor today is Accenture, who's proud to support local innovators, startups, and businesses on their digital transformation journeys. And our gold partner, Bridge Bank, is connecting local economies and helping businesses get back and ready to serve you. So thank you so much to Bridge Bank and Accenture, and please take a moment to check them out. They all support innovation, local founders, startups, tech, and much more. And they'd love to get to know you. Before we get into fostering cultures of innovation, we have two startup founders here that we'd like you to meet. We're keeping their eyes on them, and you should too. So let's start off by talking with Aston Teague, co-founder and CEO of Crowdmouth. Aston, tell us all about Crowdmouth.
Well, thanks, Brent. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon now. I'm excited to be here. Thank you again for having me. Again, my name is Aston Teague. I'm a co-founder and CEO of an Austin-based startup called Crowdmouth. Crowdmouth is a direct-to-fan growth engine and marketplace for content creators of all types. This includes musicians, YouTubers, influencers, gamers, podcasters, and even brands. You can think of Crowdmouth as the Etsy for the digital creator, but with a word of mouth twist, which I'll explain here in a second. So not to be overly cliche, but Crowdmouth was built by creators for creators. I've been a producer and songwriter for many years, and I currently manage an Austin-based singer-songwriter named Bob Schneider. One of my co-founders is also Jonathan Clay of the band Jamestown Revival. So in late 2019 and into 2020, as the lockdowns began and cancellations started, I began noticing three distinct fan behavioral patterns. First, fans were really wanting to share more often. So for instance, when I would post something online, like a live stream link on social media, I would notice that fans would immediately grab those links and share them with their friends, really out of the kindness of their hearts, or just because they wanted to support their favorite creators, but they weren't being incentivized to do so. Two, fans were looking for ways to directly support creators that they loved, more than they could do by streaming something on Spotify or watching a video on YouTube. They wanted to support them financially. And three, fans wanted a direct and personal connection with their favorite creators, more than they would get from social media or really anywhere else. So those three observations started me as an artist manager on a quest to find one single platform that would allow me to do the following things for my clients: identify and engage top fans, incentivize those fans to spread the word about my clients' content, and monetize the unique and digital items and experiential items that my clients were creating on a daily basis, which sounded pretty easy at the time. It turned out to be a little harder than I thought. As it turns out, that platform didn't exist. And that was really the birth of Crowdmouth. So fast forward 18 months later, Crowdmouth has become the only platform to empower creators to really take back and own that fan relationship and harness the power of their fans to help them grow and really build a real and sustainable career in the rapidly evolving global creator economy. So how does it work? So let's take your favorite band, for instance. Say they have a new video on YouTube. Through Crowdmouth, you can earn points by sharing that video with your friends. Those points can then be redeemed for exclusive rewards from that particular creator. This could be as simple as a shout out or a thank you video. It could be a private concert or a hangout over Zoom or Twitch. It could be a VIP meetup, both in person or virtually. It could even be signed merchandise or really anything. The possibilities are absolutely endless as far as what a creator can offer on Crowdmouth as a reward. And best of all, if you don't have enough points to earn that reward, you can simply buy it in the marketplace, or you can apply points as a discount towards that item. It's really a win-win for the creator and the fan. It allows for digital creators to literally monetize anything. And it also allows the fan to, help out their favorite artist or their favorite creator in a way that wasn't previously possible. And it gives them access to exclusive one-of-a-kind items, both experiential and physical items that can only be found on Crowdmouth. So I invite you guys to check us out at crowdmouth.com for more information. You can download the apps. There's a creator and fan app, both on the iOS and Google Play stores. And we'd love to see you guys soon. Thanks again for having me. I'm open to any questions as well.
Thanks so much, Aston. And I've had a couple of friends introduce me to I think it was a new Bob Schneider album a few weeks ago through the app. So somebody scored some points and I got to check out some new tunes.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Now let's turn to Angela Hood, who's the co-founder and CEO of ThisWay Global. Angela, tell us about ThisWay Global.
Thank you so much for the invitation today. I'm going to get to talk about my favorite topic, which is solving the jobs problem. I'm Angela Hood. I'm the founder and CEO of ThisWay Global, and we are also here in Austin, Texas. We also have offices in Boston and Silicon Valley. What we focus on is removing the bias that is really keeping success for candidates, for job candidates, and for employers. It's the number one issue that we each face when we go to apply for a job. I'm going to give you a very quick example because it's my own example, and it's why I feel so passionate about this problem. I'm a female engineer, and when I entered the workforce, I would have to apply for jobs using a resume that did not say Angela. It used my initials, AL. I am a construction engineer. I work out in the field, and most companies could not fathom why a woman would want to go and do these jobs. And I absolutely loved construction. So that was the start of my journey. And over the course of many years, I identified that the same problem exists for people of color, for military veterans, for disabled. It goes on and on. I decided that I wanted to take it by the horns, and I applied to Cambridge. I was in incubation at University of Cambridge in England, moved my family there, and worked with 150 engineers in 14 countries to develop both what to do and what not to do using artificial intelligence. It was a huge endeavor. We finally had customers that wanted to pay us for what we were doing. And so I moved back to Texas, where I'm from, and we set up an office in Austin. And we now have 5,500 companies that we manage jobs for. And it's a great privilege to be able to do that. And the thing that I would say that we've learned the most through this entire experience is there is labor that you need. There are incredibly talented people. Most of them are actually sitting inside the systems that you already are working in. You have them underneath your fingertips. The ones that you don't have there, we know how to find. And the reason why our system works differently is because we have built a network of over 3,500 organizations. These are not job boards. These are organizations and the people that rely on those organizations in a membership level. And we see the job that comes in from your company, we debias it, we send it to the people that are qualified, and we invite them to apply. It's a much kinder, gentler process. Candidates like to be treated like humans because they are humans. And then you, as the employer, get to engage with that individual, and you can bring them into a much better experience because you started off the experience treating them fairly. We have touch with over 169 million people in the US. And it is truly a privilege to be able to be here today because I know that there are so many employers that are struggling with this problem. And I know there's a lot of talent out there that's wondering, is there a company that's fair that I can work with and that I will enjoy my career with? And I can say, honestly, there absolutely is. I know at least 5,500 companies that follow these principles. We deal with roughly 189,000 jobs every week, and we expect to be managing over 2 million jobs by the second quarter of next year. I think one of the greatest validations we've received recently is that we are now part of the Google Startup Acceleration. It has been absolutely incredible. We're in week 3 and have been able to tap into the resources of all of Google to accelerate the progress we're making on this problem. So I very much appreciate you giving me this opportunity. If I've put an email there for you to reach out to me if you have any questions or if you want an introduction to someone on our team. And I encourage you to continue to be part of the solution. We will all solve this problem together. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. That's incredible reach. And I can't think of very many things that are more important than leveling the playing field and giving people unbiased access to some of the best jobs in the country. So thank you for the presentation. Today, we're going to be speaking with the heads of innovation about fostering cultures of innovation, innovation methods, nurturing talent, and strategies and more. So before we get started, we'd like to know a little bit more about who's tuning in today so that we can tailor our conversation. So please take a moment to answer the poll question that we're going to pop up on the screen here, and let us know, where you fit into this. And just as a reminder to everybody with us today, first of all, thanks for being here, and you'll be on mute, but if you have any questions for the panel, please drop those into the question box and we'll address those during or after the initial conversation. So feel free to be active in the chat there. So let's get things started, and I'd like to introduce our moderator for today. That's Brian Cahak, who is the Managing Director of Digital Growth and Marketing Operations at Accenture, and he is very well connected in the Austin startup community and has an interesting story to tell. Brian, let's hand it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Brent. And first, before we jump in, I just wanted to say thanks to Austin Inno for hosting us and putting this on, because we'd certainly love to talk more about this. And second, wanted to say thanks to Aston and Angela as well for telling your story. It's really incredible to see what you're doing, what you're accomplishing, and hats off to you, because we know how hard it is. So exciting to have you here as well. As Brent was saying, my name is Brian Cahak, and I'm responsible. I'm the Managing Director for Digital Growth at Accenture. And so just at a headline level, what that means is my teams kind of orchestrate customer journeys. So if you think about from acquisition through kind of the conversion, all the way through CRM and retention, all the kind of the activation points, as well as the underlying analytics, data, and technology required to power that, our teams are responsible for that kind of orchestration of the growth. So I'll talk about innovation in 2 contexts. One is in that specific context, but the second one, as Brent was alluding to, is the startup context. So to get to Accenture, my agency was acquired about 4 years ago. So kind of helped start and build an agency here in Austin that was bought by Accenture in 2017. So I'll talk a little bit about that startup and that inorganic growth as well, as part of our innovation context. So as he said, I'm both a moderator and a panelist today. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the rest of the panelists that'll be joining us, and then we'll get into what hopefully is a very good discussion of the breadth and depth of innovation. So as you as attendees really kind of feel get some good tips and tricks here. So I guess the next up is Fiona, so I'll let her take it away.
Hello, Brian. Thank you so much for once again having me today. So my name is Fiona Mack. I'm the regional head of JLABS at the Texas Medical Center located in Houston, Texas. So JLABS is the incubator arm of Johnson & Johnson Innovation. We'll talk a bit more today on how Johnson & Johnson really has tried to tackle this aspect of accelerating innovation, particularly in certain ecosystems that they feel have a lot of high value. So a little bit about myself. I have a PhD in molecular biology, and I've spent the bulk of my career in early stage drug discovery and development. I've worked primarily at large pharmas, particularly in the fields of oncology and a rare disease. But I've always been very focused on external innovation. So certainly for large organizations to really be able to venture into the future, they have to have methodologies for really accessing innovation, potentially accelerating it. Even those that really have strong internal R&D groups really do place a lot of value on external innovation, because as our current CSO certainly feels like innovation can happen anywhere. We may be smart, but there's so much more out in the world that we would really like to capitalize on. So Johnson & Johnson has really created a very strong infrastructure to have that innovation brought in-house, or if not, to really help accelerate that through our various communities. And so happy to tell you more about the JLABS organization.
Awesome. Thank you, Fiona. Next is Ashley Jennings.
Hi, everyone. So great to be here today. Thanks for having us. I'm tuning in live right now from the Texas Innovation Center here at the University of Texas at Austin. So if you're a part of that Longhorn Tech Nation, if you're an alumni or an alumna, please feel free to use this space as a landing pad for you coming in if you're needing to take meetings anywhere in the 40 acres area. My background, I'm a 3-time Longhorn. I have a master's in science, technology, commercialization. I'm a 2-time entrepreneur. I started my career as a former network news trained field journalist in the Northeast. While up there, I was on the ground floor of helping launch an American bureau for an international news organization, which was really where I caught the tech bug, if you will, and that startup culture. I moved back to Texas to launch one company out of a co-working space, video production company that was focused on startups and helping them tell their story. And then another company that I was recruited for to help co-found, which has then become Texas's first diversity-focused tech accelerator for women and historically underrepresented tech founders, called DeVink. And I pivoted into academia 4 years ago. I started over at the Macomb School of Business, where I was mostly focused on our undergraduate ecosystem. There was lots happening in SaaS at the time. And so I was engaging with Bay Area alum and bringing them back to campus to meet all of these incredibly innovative startups. I pivoted over to the College of Natural Sciences, where I officially became a part of the new venture technology commercialization team here at UT, and has been serving as the managing director of the Texas Innovation Center since January of 2020. So really great to be here today. I can't wait to share all that's happening right now in Longhorn Tech Nation.
Awesome, hookup. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Ashley. And then Van, I'd love to hear yours.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. Thank you, Austin Inno. I am the Executive Director of the Texas Innovation Center, as well as the Director of Technology Innovation Development at UT's Vice President of Research's office. I'm a chemical engineer by training, bachelor's, PhD, UT Longhorn alum. And before joining back to UT, I was part of a startup that came out of the research at the University of Texas at Austin, as well as the IP. The company was called Molecular Imprints, and we were a semiconductor tool manufacturing company. So we were enabling patterning down to about 10 nanometers for applications such as memory, displays, and making pattern structures for augmented reality components. In 2014, the company was acquired by Canon. It was split into 2 companies. I went to the rebranded Canon Nanotechnologies focused on semiconductors, and then a new co was spun out, and that was focused on just basically any area that we could get acquired by. And so Magic Leap acquired the company, and so both companies are now still thriving here in Austin. So a little bit about the Texas Innovation Center. We are the hub at UT Austin for bringing engineering and science discoveries and technology to market. We work with our researchers and our grad students to help them find pathways for commercialization based on their research and the intellectual property that they create. The center has many resources, but in particular, the one that I want to highlight is the fact that we have this program resource called Startup in a Box, which provides the building blocks to help our researchers and our communities learn about the mechanics of building companies. So bringing in legal counsel for incorporation, term sheet translation, immigration, bringing in CPA, HR firms, turnkey manufacturers, and really thinking about, from the research point of view, how do we flip the technology into the real world and translate it? And so really here to help our university community build companies.
That's awesome. Thank you, Van. And last but not least, Joelle, Vail.
Hello, everybody. I'm Joelle Vail. I am Chief Operating Officer for Capital Factory. I'm excited to be joining everybody today and want to share a little bit about Capital Factory. Capital Factory is the center of gravity for entrepreneurs in Texas. We have boots on the ground in Austin, San Antonio, Houston, and Dallas. And we're really focused on the success of the entrepreneur. It is truly our mission to ensure that the entrepreneur's technology basically lives through and makes it into the marketplace, because we feel that technology is what changes the world. And that success has been through multiple different paths based on what the entrepreneur needs when they need it. So that includes mostly investment, clients, whether or not they need new talent based off of what growth period they're in, or mentorship. And that's really the community that we have built. And we run with the startup or the entrepreneur, sometimes from inception all the way through their exits, or sometimes a public opportunity. And that's where we stay attached to our entrepreneurs, journeying with them and helping them along the way. Personally, I have walked that path, both with corporations utilizing entrepreneurs and innovation, also with startups. So I've been part of creating the first million, or even sometimes creating the first billion that an organization is able to do. So this journey that we talked about, when we talk about investors or mentors or customers or employees, corporations, and when I say corporations, I mean universities, I mean the Department of Defense or DODX, I mean primes, Fortune 500, Fortune 100, all of them have the ability to influence and augment the needs of the entrepreneur. And when that happens, when it happens well, it's magical. So we are very focused on making that happen at Capital Factory and want to continue this journey so that we all strengthen together.
Awesome. Thank you, Joelle. And a little fun fact, Joelle, of course, knows this is the agency I talked about. We started in Capital Factory. So I have very fond memories of the 16th floor and direct benefactor of all of what they've always done for the last over a decade now to help the local startup ecosystem kind of grow up and thrive. So I have a special place in my heart for the team. Yeah, of course. So as we jump into it, we all wanted you to see that we brought a really well-rounded team here, very seasoned professionals that have experience not only with corporations, but startups, the nonprofits, as well as higher ed, and really in the government, and really kind of help you really see from a bunch of vantage points, kind of how innovation is being pursued at different organizations, and just some tips and tricks. Hopefully you kind of leave with some real value nuggets here. So we kind of, just to start us off, we kind of created a handful of questions just that we'll kind of roll through, and then have like try to leave a little time at the end for kind of open Q&A. So if you have questions, feel free to pop it into the Q&A, and we'll kind of be moderating that as we go. And then I'll try to leave some time at the end. So first up question we wanted to kind of talk about was this concept of like innovation methods, and kind of how are each of us kind of pursuing different, what methods are we using to pursue innovation in our companies? And so the idea was like to go around and maybe talk about how do you develop and sustain innovation, in your group or in your clients. How are you doing that today? So anybody wants to maybe take that first, and we'll kind of keep it rocking.
Maybe I'll go first, since I have to keep the lights on by moving around a little bit. So first, I'd also like to say I love all the Texas pride that's coming on through the chats. I'm new to the region, so I just moved here about a year ago from the East Coast, particularly to obviously take on this role as head of the JLABS, the incubator arm. So just relating to the methodology, really what attracted me to this position was that Johnson & Johnson, like other large corporations, really once again values external innovation to really, ultimately to help them accelerate innovation to their patients. But they're one of the few companies I think they've really taken this rather unique approach to really building a total infrastructure to access that. So they have set up our JLABS and other what we call as innovation centers in key areas around the globe, where they really feel are kind of these hot spots for innovation. So that could be in the Bay Area, San Francisco, San Diego, also up and along the East Coast, now from DC to New York, all the way up to Boston. And then they had a site here, certainly really to access what is going on in Texas, connecting to the Texas Medical Center, one of the largest medical institutions within the world is based here. And then we're certainly thinking about how else do we capitalize on everything else that's going on within Texas. So we have multiple approaches for accessing this innovation. One is which really to start at the beginning with the early stage entrepreneurs. And so our JLABS locations, the incubator arm, are stationed across 13 locations throughout the US and also within Asia and within London. And then they can also coincide with our innovation centers. And so we take a very kind of proactive way in which we go into the community and try to develop these connections with kind of key academics, serial entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, really to see what is the potential pipeline of opportunities within there, but then also to perhaps to create these new companies if they're also aligned strategically with Johnson & Johnson's research focus. So once a company can potentially come into your organization through the JLABS or through a collaboration with our innovation centers, they're mostly vetted for, is there opportunities for an equity investment? Is there opportunities for research collaborations? Is there opportunities for incubation? So we really tried to bring a very broad tool set to help support our entrepreneurs. Along with potential funding opportunities, there is a mentorship that is offered with once you join into JLABS to help either craft a business plan or address a technical aspect of the company or regulatory approaches. Since we are obviously also into pharmaceuticals, all the things that may be just farther along for some companies, but they really need some guidance to bring them along that way. In addition to just general educational material regarding some of their scientific areas or just building or how to raise a Series A in the very beginning. So like I said, this is a company that really has devoted a lot to their internal R&D, but really, developing a full-fledged suite of resources to engage and activate innovation within the various ecosystems.
Brian, I'll jump in as well. Similar to what Fiona is talking about, at Capital Factory, we really focus on the community build. And we have this concept of connections, and you can try and make all the connections in the world, but what we've identified is when you bring the right parties together, they find each other. And the way that we've been able to do that is through a lot of different ways. If you've ever walked into Capital Factory, you'll find it is extremely active. Innovation needs a lot of new blood that flows through it all the time. And you need to allow those connections to happen freely. So the concept of making space, having somewhere where people can come knowing that they can bump into individuals, having an open floor plan, having the opportunity to drive events or meetups, allowing people to kind of bring their own agenda to the table and us having the ability to host that agenda. Is been super, super successful. There is programming that we do. And we do, 4 or 5 big events a year, but it is this steady cadence of programming and this drumbeat that constantly happens. So when we say, hey, let's get the entrepreneurs an opportunity to meet with mentors, we're actually running what we call an epic office hour opportunity. So the mentors know to come, the startups know to come, and it's just a kind of speed dating for entrepreneurs. Things are fast paced, they're quick, they're fun, and they're super creative. So the programming is another piece. And then the other thing, and I'll just build off of what Fiona talked about, is having the right parties present. So investors, we have an investor relations group that basically pulls together all of the investor opportunities of anyone who's interested in, we have a database of over 400 investors that just talk about, here's what I'm interested in technology-wise. Here's what I would love to see more of or hear more of. And then our opportunity is when we see that entrepreneur or that startup opportunity, we're placing it in front of these investors when possible. Mentors, I already mentioned. The corporation piece is something that I'm really proud of, and I'm just going to take a minute and explain something. What we identified is when corporations, and when I say the word corporations, again, it's a little bit wider. So there's Fortune 500, Fortune 100. There are later stage startups that have gotten their foundation really strong and want to give back. There are universities that are involved in our corporation team, so to speak. We call this the Innovation Council. And our Innovation Council is a group of individuals that share best practices and they share their need for innovation, and we're just constantly helping them navigate our community. So we're doing that through introductions, we're doing that through programming just for them, we're integrating them into this drumbeat of programming that we do. So it's just a lot of energy, a lot of activity, and what we're doing is fostering those connections. I don't want to be too long-winded, but I just want to give a little bit of an understanding of what we're kind of doing just to activate the area.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, the similarities around what I will call like the network. It's really interesting to see how folks are leveraging networks of different stakeholders to try to get the best for their clients, which is exciting. So yeah, Ashley and Van, love to hear what you all are doing.
Yes, so at the Texas Innovation Center, what we're doing is we are taking a look at the very front end of what innovation means. How do you create, and should you create, a startup at all? And so what we're doing is taking a look at a framework that we call needs-driven innovation, where whether you're a one-person company or a corporation, you really need to start with looking at evaluating needs and defining what is known as a need statement and looking at the various variety of needs that are possible and figuring out like the best opportunity. And so this needs-driven innovation is really inspired by the Stanford Biodesign program, where they go about defining a need statement, and they actually go off and collect like hundreds and hundreds of need statements. And it's a simple statement that says, you know, a way to solve a specific problem in a well-characterized population in order to achieve a measurable outcome. And so here, what you're doing is you don't a priori assign a solution. You may have a solution, but you want to give yourself the breath to explore as many possible solutions as there could exist that you may know of, that you may not know of, and then hone into the one that has the best value proposition. And so, you know, as you know, universities have lots of solutions. Our researchers are world-class here. And so we're providing and developing this tool to allow people to start, you know, in a place where they can think about where their research is heading and guide them in that way, repurpose their solutions, or even think up of new possibilities. And so very excited about that. So we have launched a program in the spring to test out this needs-driven innovation, and have launched a couple of companies coming out of it in this 7-week workshop. And typically this biodesign program is a 2-year program. And so we've condensed it down. And you know, we did that to just validate the process in a bio sector. And the next thing that we're going to be doing is developing this framework, which has not been extended to other sectors like energy, space tech, whatever you can think of. And so we're in the process of doing discovery work and defining our own need statements in terms of how to develop in this sector. And so really interested in providing people tools to innovate is basically what we're doing here at the Texas Innovation Center.
Yeah, just to add on to that, we are in the process right now of cohort number 2 applications, and these teams are interdisciplinary, right? So you have a team of 4 with a clinician who brings the problem statement, and an engineer, a scientist, and then a business school student. And the success we had out of cohort 1, we're really excited for this next cohort. And it's interesting because this methodology obviously is very different than Lean Startup, which is how do we innovate very quickly and get something to market and get a product out and going very quickly. And so it's important for especially our researchers, our postdocs, our grad students who are working in STEM to think about this needs-driven innovation way, because as Dr. Trusket said, we have so many different solutions coming through our door all the time. What's the real problem that we're solving?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I guess I'm applying to cohort 2 then. That sounds pretty amazing. So I get asked often, thank you for that. And it's awesome to see, you know, the different patterns. Like I get asked often about Accenture's point of view on innovation and what it's doing. So maybe share a few things there, and just even to build on what you've heard from the others, so you can kind of see the pattern. So like how Fiona and Joelle were talking about what I've kind of called this network. So you know, one of the challenges, of course, with Accenture is clients always expect us to be cutting edge, to really understand the latest in the industry's different contexts, so we can add value very quickly. That's always kind of a speed to value, path to value is always something we're thinking about. So to facilitate that from an innovation lens, like there's a lot of things we do, but just a couple to highlight. One of them is these concept of innovation network. So it kind of builds on what you were talking about. Is there's across each one of the core industries, there is a innovation network of all the professionals that are in that space get together, talk about market context, talk about the latest Accenture research, talk about third-party research we subscribe to, talk about different themes and contexts that we're hearing. So it provides kind of like an internal kind of community of practice, if you will, to keep everybody across the globe affiliated with that industry, very much in tune with what's going on, but also allow for people to break out and have regional or even kind of sub-practice breakouts as well. So there can be different levels of granularity, but also part of a community who's out there doing this together, and you don't feel like you're on your own. So kind of innovation networks. I think another thing you'll see a lot about is the technology innovation. So Accenture is very publicly put forth multiple billions of dollars, for example, around cloud, and cloud innovation is because that's where clients are really pushing, as we all know, is as a big and fast accelerating part of the technology space. So Accenture really is leading that, and the way we stay ahead is really by putting a lot of energy into investments. And it doesn't just mean organic acquisitions, although that's certainly part of it, but just additional research that goes into it. What are the technology platforms that are cutting edge? And how do we make sure that we really understand like the latest in that space? And these kind of investment fund vehicles allow for the investment of time, money, energy to go pursue that. And then maybe on the third level, it's not like an innovation, like separate division per se, but something we are very mindful across all the practitioners, again, not just the ones on my teams, but across the groups, is just this is a super tactical thing around design thinking. So if you're familiar with this concept of human-centered design, Van and Ashley, you were talking about like what are the needs? And so it made me smile when you say that, because one of the things we're always trying to be very in tune with, anytime you have a bunch of really smart people who know a space, the knee-jerk reaction is to like lead with a solution versus understand, well, what is your need in the first place? And how do I mesh your need, your unmet need with my solution? And so constantly kind of teaching folks to like evolve their, really understand the customer's unmet needs. So the solutions can evolve, because in our space, 6 months oftentimes is out of date, maybe even 9 months at the longest. And so how do you kind of keep practitioners very much on the razor's edge when you don't have the benefit of maybe speed and agility that a startup naturally has? So those are kind of maybe 3 ways that we help, kind of mechanisms, if you will, that we use to foster innovation and make it consistent. Okay, all right, that's great. So on to the next one, we wanted to talk about culture. And so similar ideas, like how do we kind of foster a culture of innovation so that employees really feel empowered, inspired to drive change for the better, and just talk about that culture aspect, which we all know we've all wrestled with. So yeah, anybody want to jump in and share their perspective?
Happy to jump in here. At the University of Texas, from the president's office down, we have such a culture focused on entrepreneurship, innovation, and technology commercialization. It's a very collaborative ecosystem here on campus. And then taking that a step further, when we collaborate with the Austin startup ecosystem and the Dallas and the Houston and the San Antonio, Texas is just really becoming a powerhouse, which is really exciting. Even though we're based out of Cockrell School of Engineering, we have allies over in Macomb School of Business, Fine Arts, Moody College of Communication, LBJ, Liberal Arts, UGS. And so there's centers and units in each of these colleges across the 40 acres that have very specific focus. So we're able to point people to those resources if needed. If we're not a specific fit, specifically on the undergraduate side per se, we'll point them to those resources. Here at the Texas Innovation Center, Van and I, we're former entrepreneurs ourselves. So we run a very lean, mean, agile startup team, if you will. And I think that's really helped us over the past 2 years, especially in our current state of the world, be able to drive really high focused success, because we're able to, as a startup ourselves and as entrepreneurs ourselves, dive in very deeply with our portfolio of companies. So we have over 35 companies across probably 12 different industries. And we do everything from
incorporation all the way through helping them, close a Series B round if needed. And so I think creating this culture here on campus around collaboration has really spurred a lot of success on the commercialization front. And then, here in the physical co-working space, we're creating a culture around safety. A lot of our researchers, faculty, postdocs, clinicians who walk in the space might not have ever even heard of the word founder or thought of themselves in that identity in that way. And so we've created a very safe space for people to come in and explore the word entrepreneurship. And they don't have to commit to anything. We just want them to bring us their ideas. And then for us to start a conversation around where they want to take those ideas and what they're thinking about. So that's some of the stuff happening here at UT.
Fantastic.
Just to maybe echo Ashley's comment about this really also needing to come from the top down. Having been in pharma most of my career, many of the biggest blockbuster drugs have come from acquisition and were commercially developed by another company, but initiated by others. So I think there is a certain understanding that it really to not only be innovative, but to really be profitable, right? You really have to kind of reach out. And so having an organization that understands that and really has developed a variety of tools that helps really support that is very important. But on a more of a ground level, while we're part of Johnson & Johnson, this huge behemoth of a corporation, we are actually quite small, agile teams based within all the JLABS that allows us to really stay quite connected to, we think, are kind of the key leaders within our regional expertise, but then also to be on the ground to, actively able to find aspects of innovation and bring them internally for further vetting and further evaluations. And so one thing that we also have a tool is for these quick fire challenges, where these are not quite levels of crowdsourcing, but when we think, once again, there's an area that we are not have no expertise in or interest in, but we want to kind of develop that along the lines and really be able to kind of source that from our communities in order to develop that. So we run these quick fire challenges throughout the years with the hope that they will align with our R&D strategy and eventually be commercialized. But as a small team on the ground, we also help really service our customers. So our entrepreneurs that are within our incubator spaces and understanding what really are their needs allows us to create some innovative approaches to help them, once again, new company creation, access capital, develop collaborations with the organization. So building upon, having opportunities for the CEOs to talk to each other, having opportunities for them to talk with J&J really helps to show that it's not simply from our high level in terms of getting, more programs for our pipeline, but really how do we support the entrepreneurs on the grounds and help accelerate that level of innovation.
Yeah. I'm Fiona. I'm keep adding on to what you're saying, but a couple thoughts. One is it's not hard for us to build an innovative culture at Capital Factory because our product is innovation, right? And that's where you're constantly swirling around to say, all right, how do we drive this creative thought? How do we keep this moving? What I think the biggest thing is that we translate that culture into other organizations. Having the ability to invite people in, allow them to experience it, and then giving them tools to pull it into their organizations so that they can pull through their culture, which sometimes is met with an amazing open arms approach. And then other times there are these blockers that happen. It can only go so far in a company, and then innovation is thwarted. Whether it is this belief internally that we have to do it ourselves or we have to come up with it, or it is this risk aversion level, right? You're comfortable with risk up to a certain point, and then you are uncomfortable with risk. So it's really trying to understand where people are stuck with innovation and giving them some tools that will help them pass that. And you mentioned some of the things, Ashley mentioned too, just run a couple things that allow thought-provoking, run a cohort, run something that is a hackathon, run something where you throw a problem set out there. And the interesting thing is when you throw a problem set out, a lot of times you don't get a specific answer. You get 10 really good answers, and sometimes they approach it and they see the problem much differently than you did, and you can get a lot of different answers that you pull in. So it's really just constantly giving yourself permission and giving your organization permission to continue to ask questions, explore, take on a learning concept. You know, that is what really drives this. Curiosity is what drives entrepreneurship. It really does. And allowing that into your organization is probably one of the biggest things. And I'll just leave it with one other thought, which is this concept of having a strong leadership understanding. Fiona, you mentioned it, and I just want to put a couple of exclamation points against it. You absolutely need an advocate that is high up in an organization that believes that innovation is the right thing to do. And that will permeate down to your culture. And then obviously you get a ground up swell. And if anyone's seen really cool technology, it's like you can't, your mind expands and you can't erase where it brings you to. Brian, I know you're inside of one of those organizations right now, so I'm super interested in your opinion on this part.
Yeah, that's, it's awesome. I get the luxury of going last, so I can be equally, amazed by all the things that I hear, which is fantastic. It's a really interesting, I love this topic because some of the things, like what I hope people picking up on is these patterns of how do you, create and preserve. So I love the concept of safety and the ability to allow space for that. When we were acquired by Accenture, even on a more macro level, what Accenture learned through doing at the time a bunch of acquisitions, we were not certainly the first one, but there was a sequence that was happening almost monthly, was the importance of preserving a safe space for the entire organization to learn how to get acclimated. And that was really, really critical learning. So the people didn't feel like it wasn't what got stolen from me, but it was how do we, that Accenture was there to really provide a platform to take this jewel thing that was doing something really well and put it on a much bigger stage and accelerate its growth versus, take parts from it. And so safety almost says at a macro level, as we were provided multiple years of the ability to kind of operate as we had always had before, we were kind of asked to expand into a much larger remit, which is hence how I got to this role, being a general manager of multiple practices today. So I think that piece is certainly something that's really critical to help preserve the elements. The other one, Joelle, you mentioned the executive sponsor. So part of the formula we certainly implement especially for inorganic acquisitions, is that executive sponsor, someone who can be the classic kind of roadblock buster and approver and help guide, don't go there, go this way. That's something that as part of the inorganic acquisition is really, really critical. So that executive sponsor plus the kind of the ring fence. And then the other thing I would mention that we, I certainly did as a startup leader and kind of growth, especially through the fast growth stage, is really trying to recruit very much on the front side for that kind of personality. So kind of a storyline I find myself saying often still to this day was, the folks that really accelerate in client services, like a digital agency is certainly client services, are folks that are highly curious. And Joelle, you were talking about that. That they really, and because of their curiosity, they really, as a personality, are constantly looking to learn and grow new skills. So they just put themselves on the edge to really know the latest stuff. And so those two things are really important. And the third thing is around speed and agility. It's certainly critical as a startup because without that, that's your competitive advantage, which gives you a moat, arguably, is the ability to get there faster than maybe a larger corporation. But internalizing that on teams when it comes to speed to value for the client's problem. So we would do a lot of that work with the agency. And then certainly I find myself in the new world where I'm now, and I guess on the big company side, really teaching that to a lot of the teams that are coming in, and hiring based on a bias for that as well, not just hoping I get it. So kind of recruiting with that in mind. So a lot of things you can learn in the startup world and in the accelerated growth phase certainly poured over to where we are today. Awesome. Yeah, I love this conversation. I know we're going to run out of time. Okay, one more. I think we've got time for one more, what we call the innovation long game, which is really how are you creating innovation habits? So not just having a division that does it, but really kind of this concept of innovation habits. And how are you balancing, innovation if, you know, maybe as part of that conversation with like more immediate goals, and as people kind of feel that tension. So yeah, so this innovation long game, how are you thinking about it? And how are you kind of like creating those habits?
So at UT, you know, what we're trying to do is create a community. So as our faculty come to the university, they have colleagues, they have advisors who can show them how to write grant proposals and start a research lab. But what we don't have is a critical mass knowledge base about what entrepreneurship, technology commercialization is about, what are the skill sets and mechanisms for doing this. And so through the Texas Innovation Center, what we're doing is we're providing those resources, like I mentioned, Startup in a Box, and we're inviting researchers, especially their grad students, to come in and learn about this. And as you know, as we touch more and more people, then we create this network where our researchers and students can walk down the hallway, bump into each other, ask, you know, very candid questions about what the mechanisms are. And that also lowers the energy barrier for people to want to get involved. It demystifies the whole process. You know, one of the things that we do here is early on have our faculty and our students talk to investors. And the conversation's not about money. It's about what other types of companies are you seeing emerging? What are the nuances between this particular academic research versus another one that you might be seeing that's emerging as a very, you know, promising company? And so, you know, people start learning about the vocabulary and the kinds of conversation, and people's guards are dropped. And so, you know, creating that community. And from what I'm hearing from everybody else, your various innovation programs are also creating a community where people can really drop their guards and ask those candid questions. And so community building is such an important aspect of the long game of innovation, I think, is the theme that ties and binds in what we're talking about today.
Yeah, Van, I'll add just a quick thought on that. When I think of the long game of innovation, you know, when you're journeying from a startup, when they're ideating and they're deciding whether or not a product is truly a viable option, or even getting to their minimum viable product, all the way to the point where they now have kind of dueling customer responsibilities and, you know, a growth pattern and scalability, there is this journey. Their needs changed based on where they're at. And sometimes we can set up a lot of what they need at a certain point. But what you're saying, and I think this is so true, and all of us really need to hear it very clearly, is we all need each other, because we can create certain, you know, success measures that intersect somebody and give them all the resources they need at that point. But chances are, and we hope that they grow past us, but they're going to have a future need and they're going to need their next level of support, and they're going to need somebody else to help them battle, whether it is now, okay, I've gotten my Series B and I'm in a huge scalability, and my executive team that was great from my angel investment to Series A is not the same executive team that's going to rise beyond my Series B, and so forth. So it's just really intersecting them where they are, understanding all of the assets that are available for them, and us joining together and just, you know, stepping up and connecting. Because, you know, we heard two startups, Angela and Aston, early on, and what they need today is not going to be the same thing again, with a lot of hard work, will not be the same thing 2 years from now. And that's exactly the way that it should be. So to that point, the long game in my mind is making sure that you have the connection of the communities together. We're all aware of what each other are doing, and that we can kind of flip the switch and connect what is necessary based off of the entrepreneur's need.
And I liked what Van had said regarding creating like a critical mass. And for me, as I said, new to this region, and it's at least the Houston area being touted as this burgeoning life science community. And what's the impediment to really making it competitive to the San Francisco and the Boston site? And in many cases, really is having that foundation of long-term expertise, like serial entrepreneurs who have gone through this, developed companies, had failures, but also had successes, so that people can continue to build along those lines. And so using these aspects of community, how can we learn from each other? How can we support each other? What are our challenges? What do we overcome? And getting a lot of that to remain within this region, I think would really help create a much more long-term innovation, that, because there are so many resources for us from a digital health perspective or a technology perspective that are aligned with healthcare and aligned with all of the larger sciences that have going on, from the right of engineers and astronauts in any other area. They could see some of that kind of coalesce to retain a lot of that talent in the region and give them the opportunities to build more companies. I think will certainly help bring having a more long-term future for innovation would be much more palatable in this area.
Sorry, just wanted to add on to that.
Yeah.
Because I loved what Fiona said, and it sparked this whole Texas, yes, we can continue to really, amplify the middle of the country. And from an economic development standpoint, so needed right now, right? And I mean, we have Indeed's headquarters here, Apple, Dell, Google has a bureau here, Facebook, Tesla obviously is taking over the East Side right now. And so it's exciting. And what's going to happen, long-term innovation, is I think the city of Austin is really at a pinnacle point where we can focus all of these efforts on really, our tagline is big tech, big impacts. And, we're working with companies in the deep tech sector. And so collaboration across cities, specifically here in Austin, in the ecosystem itself, is very important to move those companies along, because they're longer term, longer ROI companies. They're going to take, it's a different time period than just rolling out a SaaS company. And so I think it's really important for the collaboration to continue, and for the Texas ecosystem as a whole, startup ecosystem as a whole, just to continue coming together. So we're hoping to see you, Fiona. We're going to visit Houston, hopefully in the next few months.
Absolutely,
yeah,
can't wait.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. The one thing I'd add, I know we could do three hours of this, I know. So, as a commercial enterprise, commercial for-profit enterprise, like monetizing innovation, making sure it's performing is really, really important. So that element for us is really important. So a couple of structural things is, the old adage, you only manage what you measure. And so there, for leaders, like the executive leaders on my team, myself, and all the others like us, we have a management objective. And I think this is a really important thing in the for-profit space, is a management objective for what we call like offering development, which is actually innovating on your offerings to making sure that they're staying market relevant. Market could be the industry, it could be the geography, it could be even a specific client, but really making sure that the offerings are staying relevant. So there's a management objective for it. There's kind of investment of significant time carved out to facilitate it. And then you'll find a variety of different management techniques, but one of the ones I use is have a monthly sync with all of the leaders who have that management objective, and understand, just basic status check, like where are they at, what's the help that they need, and whom else might they want to collaborate with to accelerate it, like a mini network, so they're not trying to go it alone. But like, again, I think that's a lens from a commercial enterprise, really trying to systematically produce new offerings that we can monetize in a short order as part of our charter. So that's maybe something to think about if you're a corporation out there. Okay, as expected, we're tight on time, so we're going to cut to the lightning round, which is it's not the Zach Galifianakis between two ferns, but we're going to try to get close. So what we're going to do is work around really quick, and just like, what's one takeaway that each of us would like you to leave with before you leave the webinar today? So maybe Fiona, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I think a kind of key for us has been, as you said, building these networks and supporting of an ecosystem, and really being able to tap into a variety of resources. I think there are a wealth of resources available for early stage startups and for larger stage corporations to really find collaboration, funding. I'll certainly make a plug for tap into Johnson & Johnson Innovation. We're hoping to expand to really be supportive of a lot of the Middle Atlantic, in addition to the South and Southwest. So please reach out if you have any questions.
Awesome, Fiona. Van or Ashley?
what I would say is that before you start something, or even as you go in your journey, just remember to revisit the concept of thinking about what the problem that you're working on is about, and who that population or people that you're addressing, and if what you're doing has a true measurable outcome, so that everything is kind of data driven and you have a place to go and jump off and continue. So those are my parting thoughts.
Just to piggyback off of something that Joelle and Fiona said, is let's just keep collaborating. I think it's so important across all networks, sharing of resources, sharing of programming, sharing of capital, sharing of access to that capital. Introductions are so important. And so I just can't wait to keep collaborating. It's been incredible to see what's happened here at the 40 Acres over the past years, and we're just getting started. And it's going to take all of our allies, the incubators, accelerators, friends and family of the Texas Innovation Center to continue getting some of these companies to market. And so yeah, let's just keep collaborating.
Awesome. Joelle?
I love it. I love it. My biggest thing I'm going to highlight again, Texas, underline, underline, underline. It is this silent mid-US treasure is exactly what it is. And what we've been able to harness in regards to innovation is just, it's tremendous. So I would ask any entrepreneur when looking, or even a corporation or anyone who really wants to understand innovation, you can come into Texas. We're welcoming you with open arms. No matter what city you decide you want to explore, know that we're inviting you to all of them, and we'll continue to connect you to each piece of Texas, because together, Texas, which if you look at Texas, like it's 3 hours between cities. It is larger than some countries when you look at the economic status of Texas. So all that being said, I think we should remember Texas is the place to lean into when it comes to innovation.
And last, that's a great, you stole my plug for the Texas entrepreneur. I think, so for the corporate innovator, either head of an innovation lab, or if you're like an intrapreneur, as they often call it, my tagline is like, live at the intersection, meaning live at the intersection between the strategy and the operations, and operationalizing that, live at the intersection with where the humans meet the financial outcomes. If you can live at the intersection, I think is how you, because as a commercial enterprise, often have to monetize it, you have the best path to actually meet unmet needs, solve it in a way where you're delivering financial results, and your humans are super excited and want to stay and be bigger flames for others looking to do the same. So live at that intersection, I think, is where the real value is. Okay, and I think we ran long, but I think Brent's gonna close us out here.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks to all our panelists. That's a really incredible conversation. As you all heard, there's some really great themes there about collaboration and communication and working across some of those traditional geographic and company boundaries. There's so much that startups and corporations can learn from each other, and it has just a ton of value for everybody involved. In addition to having great leadership and supporting innovation across both startups and corporations. So thank you all again for being here today. I'm going to post a recap of this conversation on Austin Inno in the next couple of days. So you'll be able to see some of the main themes and watch a replay of this conversation. And don't hesitate to reach out to us with any of your questions. And before we go, I want to just really thank the panelists again for this really insightful conversation. And a big thank you to our presenting partner, Accenture, and our gold partner, Bridge Bank. So thank you all for being here so much, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care, everyone. Hook 'em horns.
Yeah.